I can laugh.
No,
we
he's
can
completely allowed to laugh.
respectful.
Like if he doesn't
If
agree
you
with
want to
my
laugh,
opinions, he's
it's
allowed to disrespect me as much
fine.
as he wants, but he shouldn't expect that I
We
give
should
him
be nice to
an
each
ounce of
other, though.
respect
I
back.
mean,
Well,
But
you're trying to
should
like
be nice.
interrogate me on what it means to be an
Thank you for
American,
letting me
and
talk.
No,
we're
I've
all
really
interrupting
enjoyed
each
this.
other. There's a
Thank
lot
you
of people
for
here. That's the nature of
having me
this.
here.
You're welcome, Lemon Green.
There's a lot. You're trying to like
letting
ask
me
me on what it means to be an
Thank you for
American,
letting
and then
me
you're saying,
talk.
"Oh, Canadians were like
No,
genociding the natives up till
No,
2003."
you've
That's
never
not
let
my
me finish
problem.
my thought, but I'm going to stop you because you're obviously not going to have a respectful session with me. So,
Well, I would just like to point out, back to the substantive issues, you were saying how it's dangerous to say that somebody doesn't share our values as an American. But my question would be to a lot of people, and this is the operative question, is what does it mean to be an American? Because, and before we get on to that, I think it's not a rhetorical question, it's an important question. I think a lot of people kind of use that as a gotcha, like, oh, so you think I'm less of an American? But I mean, what actually does that mean? Because I'll tell you that there are a lot of people that come here and they will guilt us over, we're not inclusive enough, or our American identity isn't inclusive enough. But yet at the same time, they're not actually willing to give up their own national identity. I mean, there are cases, you could even go back into the 1990s when you would have even sports contests like a soccer game in LA, and you would have all the Mexican immigrants waving the Mexican flag and cheering against the American team. And it's like, they don't even cheer for our sports teams. Like, they don't wave our flags. And you could see this time and time again. They don't want to accept our language, our values, our customs, our mannerisms, our holidays. But then they'll get bent out of shape when you say, you're not exactly as American. And to me, American citizenship is not what it means to be an American. Being on the American land is not what it means to be an American. And yeah, there are a lot of people in America that are on the land and citizens that I wouldn't consider American. So I don't think there's anything dangerous about that. What's dangerous is that we're losing our country and our way of life. Like if I went to Mexico, I'm Mexican, by the way. My last name is Spanish. If I went to Mexico and got citizenship and lived on the land, I wouldn't be Mexican. I don't speak Spanish. I'm not a part of the culture. I have never lived there. And it could go to any country and that would be the same. But for some reason, America must convert and gel and conform to whoever comes here. And if everybody is an American, nobody is an American. If everyone can be, and there's nothing that has to change, there's nothing that has to adapt, then it means nothing. So that is what's dangerous.
I don't think the Mexicans think of the Mormon ranchers down there as full-blood Mexicans, and that's not even a race thing.
Yeah.
So this is where I partially agree with Nick. And by the way, Nick, everybody on these D-Live things wants me to come, quote unquote, come home.
You're based, bro.
You have the
like
physiognomy. You're big. You're a Chad Groiper. Join us.
Chad Endomorph.
Look, dog, I am my own entity, and I float to where I am. I call myself a conservative. But with that being said, I do agree a little bit. So when you are American, right? You are American. And watch, I'm going to say this, and everybody in the chat goes, "Oh my God, he said it." When you are American, you put American values first. You know what I mean? So that's how it rolls. The same is expected everywhere else in every other country. If I want to be a German, I obviously need to put German values first. It's literally, in my opinion, because of like what I believe, it is God, country, and then I got to worry about all the other stuff underneath. And if you're not putting your country or where you call yourself that you say you are, then you're not wherever you say are, whether that's American, German, European, yada yada yada, all that other great stuff that doesn't really matter. So
yeah,
I guess. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, my point before was that I find that specifically with First Nations people, I'm not talking about immigration here, I'm talking about First Nations people in my country, the idea that they are less Canadian than just white people here it's led to a genocide. And so I'm very weary about the idea that certain people are less than
it has nothing to do with like how.
Again, I'm going to ask you to be respectful to me since I respected your time to speak.
Let me hear her out. I want to hear what she's trying to say. So
thank you. But obviously that's happening in my country, even to the point where their land is actively being taken, land that they've had on treaties and that they live on and that they survive on. They're not allowed to leave their reservations, but yet the government doesn't give them things like clean water or electricity. But they're not allowed to leave to go get jobs elsewhere. They're supposed to stay within their communities. And if they leave, they risk facing extreme violence. So I'm obviously not super educated on the topic of like what makes an American, which is partially what I'm trying to understand in this whole debate.
Honestly, me as an American citizen too, because obviously my definition of American is on just respect American citizen to realize, because I feel like politics is such a huge part of American culture, because we have, like, when I say I'm appreciating, I don't know, like Spanish culture, there's like, I mean, Hispanic culture, like there's food and there's
love
the
that food,
music.
boy. Let me tell you something. Continue.
What?
Continue. Sorry, that was a fat moment.
Oh, and then when you're appreciating American culture, it's almost like you have to realize that politics are such a huge part of American culture. So I guess a part of American would be, for me, is respecting other people's opinions and just loving the country as a whole. And I don't believe that your religion should affect how American you are, because that's just dumb and it's borderline fascism.
I agree, Lucas.
It's not. I'm not saying literal like enforced fascism. It's more like what's the word? Like, oh, you can be an American, but you're not as much American as me because you don't conform to my values and views.
It's not my values; it's the values of the nation, the people as a mass, not just me.
America was built on the idea that I can have this civil discussion with you and I could disagree with you.
But America's not an idea. I think that's the fundamental problem we're
America
running into.
was built on the idea.
But it isn't. And I understand what you're saying, and I get it, but I think there's a big overemphasis that is placed on the civic aspect of America, and that's, I think, where we're getting lost. Because even you talk to Republicans like that political education guy, and he'll say things like, you know, America was built so that, you know, people can come here and refugees can come here and we can all get along. And the thing is that America was not designed. The American government was designed by the founding fathers, but the country was not designed. The country is organic. The country is organic and has been built over time by people coming here and settling and building and fighting and so on. And so when people say that, well, all that America means is like freedom of discussion or something, it ignores, I think, the much deeper complexities of what national identity is comprised of.
Yeah.
Why do people stick together in their communities and states and regions and so on? And actually, for a long time, it was race. And American identity is something that has changed over time. It's something that's complex, and different aspects of American identity have had different levels of salience. But for most of America's history, being white was part of American identity, and specifically being English or being Northern European.
Mm-hmm.
And these identities have changed over time. But what we've seen at this point, maybe, 50 or 100 years ago, more aptly, the identity of America was, it was racially white. It was culturally like that Anglo-Protestant culture. Politically, it was the Constitution and all of that. It was English. It was Christianity. And what we've seen in the last 150 years, or 150 to 100 years, is that all the aspects of the culture have been eroded. And so literally all that is left, America is no longer a Northern European country. It's no longer a white country. The culture has evaporated, English and all that stuff. And all that's really left is the civic and political identity. That doesn't mean that that's all there ever was. That's all that's left after this hollowing out of national identity. And I don't believe that's a good development. I think we have to at least restore the cultural identity, and we'll see if we can make that work, a nation that's defined by its cultural and political values. But I think even that is tricky. I think you need, maybe not everybody needs to be white, but I think you need a racial core for the country too, to anchor the country. Singapore is like this. China is like this. Russia is like this. There are many multiracial countries in the world, but the multiracial countries that exist and survive are ones with a racial core. In Russia, it's the Russians. They've got Tatars and they've got steppe people. In Central Asia, they've got Asiatics, but the cultural core is Moscow. It's the European Western part. It's the Russians. In China, it's the Han core in the East. right? And so the problem is that we have no cultural core. We have no ethnic or population core. And when that happens, you see the development of several nations within a country, which is to say that you'll have the Southwest, which is going to be Hispanic. You'll have the Pacific coast, which will be lots of Asians. You'll have the Southeast, which will be lots of blacks. Whites will be sort of scattered, obviously, all over. And at that point, you don't really have any coherent thing that says, well, this is a single coherent whole, which is America. You have a lot of different things going on. And that's, I think, what everybody's trying to avoid. That would be chaos.
And before anybody says anything, like, I don't, obviously, like I said before, I don't agree everything that Nick says, but some of the stuff that brings up is stuff that I do believe in. But before anyone says anything racist about the white thing, I'm not saying anybody will. I will pay you $5 if you go over to like Europe, like London, ask them what the stereotypical American is, and they don't give you an example of some big fat white country dude.
Yep.
I also want to interject. There's a large misconception, especially people from the Anglosphere, specifically America and Canada, that most countries have a birthright citizenship. And this is not true, especially in the first world. Most countries, especially Europeans ones, you have the citizenship of your parents. Being born in a country, you will be deported as a baby with your parents because you don't have a right to live there just because your mother happened to give birth on someone else's land. And
Okay.
I think that's a very fair standard, to be
So
honest.
there's a lot to unpack before anyone else says anything, because I feel like a lot was just thrown.
I'm going to go after you, Lucas.
Okay, so I guess you were talking, Nick, you were talking about American culture and how it's kind of changed over time. And what I think is so beautiful, I think what is so beautiful about America is that it changes and the culture has changed. But I think where we're struggling at this point is we don't even know what American culture is. We cannot
Kind of a
identify
problem, though.
or define an American, because an American can mean anything. And I think that's the issue with.
But should it?
And then I don't know. I guess the problem I have with you saying that America was originally white was that well, yes, citizens were white, but there was also black slaves and Native Americans that lived on America. So I think it was more diverse, but no one was considered an American unless you were white.
Native Americans actually fall under, I think, Caucasian, though. So, which.
Oh, but America's not the continent. America is the nation, you know. So people say like, oh, well, they were here first. And it's like, sure. I mean, you had Native Americans on Long Island, but it wasn't Long Island, New York. It was, you know, whatever was a Native American language, and they're, you know, running around in loincloths. We made America, you know, they didn't even know what America was until we
No, I'm
called
not
it that.
denying that. I'm just saying that they lived on American, well, what was considered American soil at the time, that lived in the 13 colonies. And I guess my more point was the black slaves. So you can say that, yes, Americans were considered all white and Anglo, but there were slaves that they were just not considered people, and they weren't allowed to participate and contribute to the American culture. And I think that's the issue, is that now that they are citizens and they have the same fundamental rights as we do, that they never got to contribute to the culture. So I think that's kind of another issue.
Lucas, oh wait, my bad. I didn't want to interrupt.
Trey, yeah, Lucas. Is that what you're gonna say?
Yeah, that's all.
All right, Trey, you say this, and then we're gonna try and move on.
Sorry,
So-
Boppity wants to be unmuted. He's been DMing me about it. Sorry.
I'll work.
Thank you. I heard a couple points throughout this. I've been trying to keep quiet, let everybody else talk, but I wanted to discuss the point of having a race majority in America. I believe Nick mentioned that, if I misspoke, but the importance of having a majority race. And I personally don't believe that matters. I think that, you know, everybody is the same, just because someone has different color skin than somebody else doesn't really make a difference. Actually, it doesn't really make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. And I think that, we're all really the same people. I mean, I have friends of all different backgrounds and all different colors. And look, I'm gonna be honest, there are great people of all different colors. There are American people of all different colors. And I personally do not believe that the color of your skin has any effect. And also, before I stop, I believe that what it is to be an American is to be a citizen of America. I believe that you should practice American values and that you should support American values, but by definition, being an American is being a citizen of America, regardless of your background or who you support politically.
Anyway, you were on I think you were on the Zoom when I think it was based Catholic or someone. He brought up the Putnam studies from Bowling Alone and a couple other papers. Diversity, ethnic diversity, decreases social capital. It makes low trust societies you don't want to live in, like the favelas in Brazil. You may say that you can love an individual who's of a different race, and of course you can. And of course there's great people in this country who aren't just white. I mean, specifically in the America First movement, there's people like Justin KG and JD, who I don't want to use as tokens, but they are truly my friends. Like, we play Animal Crossing all the time together.
Oh my God!
And
you play that game.
yeah, shut up. But my point is, no one's saying that you should like judge an individual based on something they didn't choose. But the security and the continuation of a nation is not like some like hippie lovey, oh, let's be nice and hold hands, kumbaya, because the people we're letting in don't think that way. They think in racial terms. And if you're saying we shouldn't think in racial terms or in ethnic terms, but they do, right? They create their own enclaves in the country. You can see that in certain districts of New York. Like I brought up the little Somalia in Minnesota. These other people do. And it's not conducive to a society that wants to maintain itself if you're throwing away the core, if you're throwing away social capital, if you're making a low trust society in the name of not judging people based on physical attributes.
I totally see what you're saying. And look, I don't think that what they're doing is right either. I think that, nobody should be racist, regardless of whether you're immigrating here or you've been here. I don't agree with them doing that either. I am not hypocritical at all. I think that we should all practice the same things, whether you're immigrating here or you're not immigrating here. And I will never support racism. And I don't think that the color of your skin matters at all.
All right. So we've had a lot of good points of this question. Thank you for the question, Lemon. You definitely sparked a lot of things that went away from the question. But all right, so I
also want to apologize to Lemon and Lucas. I'm not trying to interrupt, but there's just so many people here. And sometimes I think I've caught a pause and I'm incorrect. You were just like thinking. So I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's okay.
All right. Thank you for that's very respectful of you, HW. Let you put your mask back. I'll let you put your mask back on, play with your wooden guns. All right. Yeah. All right. You do that. I got my actual Glock. Yeah, I'm scared of you. Okay. Technically I could testify that I think that's a real gun. If you step on my property, I'll put a 7mm through your dome. All right. Moving on.